Hello and welcome to Audionautic. Today we're taking a deep dive into the hybrid electro-acoustic synthesizer Vespera from MNTRA. Curtis, what's going on with this synth?
It's a huge behemoth of a synthesizer, and we're taking it down. We're having a look at its sound design techniques, what it's used for, how it's been sampled, and where we're going with it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So first we'll start just talking a little bit about what it is, then we'll do a sound demo. Curtis went through a bunch of the awesome presets, and then we'll go over the user interface and finally its place in our synth arsenal, because this is for the pro version, which is 70 bucks, 32 gigs of RAM for spec. So it's a big synth, but it has its
It's
place. Let's get into it.
really interesting. It's a really nice way. MNTRA, they came out, they're a relatively new company, I feel. And they're always trying something different, always trying something new. This new one, Vespera, they sent to us, and we don't have any say over what we're talking about. They just sent it over, sent us a code. Been playing around with it. Really interesting. So I've got sounds, and then you want to do sounds and then UI, or UI and then sounds?
Yes. Let's do sounds and then UI. But I also, you mentioned I messed up too because of the strange start that we've had. But you wanted me to mention a big hello to all of our new subscribers. Our last video on Logic has done some crazy numbers, and yeah, we love talking about Logic, or at least I do because I use it, and Eon Lake uses it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to everybody that's been asking in the comments of that video, we are going to be checking out the stem splitting and all that. I just wanted to wait a week to make sure that there's no bugs, because I'm finishing up a bunch of remix projects and things like that. So I need Logic functioning, but we're going to check it out. We're going to do a stem shootout with FL, because that's the one that we ranked as the highest in terms of quality. So that's what we're going to do either next week or the week after. So we'll be doing that. But yeah, we appreciate everybody who hopped on. Awesome. We've also got another patron, Thomas, in the chat. How's it going, Thomas? I was listening to your remix again this morning. Love that thing. And yes, Mike, we will be covering the Polybrute next week, not this week, because it came out a little late. So for us to cover this week, we want to do it justice because it looks pretty interesting. Mike says, why would there be bugs in Logic? I don't know. I always just wait for any update of anything. It's always wise to wait a little bit just to see if there's anything, because I have projects. I don't want anything to happen there. Thomas also says, remember to smash that like button. I didn't say it, he did, but he's right. If you like it, hit like. Okay, Curtis, let's get back to it. So anything you want to add before we hop to the video?
A lot of fun. Keep your ears open. And we'll get into why I think it's fun later on down the line.
Yeah, and we'll walk through the plugin as well afterwards. Curtis will do a live one. So we're just going to watch a quick video that shows some of the sounds, and then we'll be back and we'll talk about it. But we want to, while it's going, everybody let us know what you think of the synth and all of that. We're curious to hear everybody's thoughts.
So here it is. MNTRA Instruments Vespera. Vespera meaning evening star. Delightful. It's tube-driven modular synthesis. With sampling from acoustic and organic textures. That's the idea anyway. And this is meant to be the first in a series of said acoustic sample-based plugins. So yeah, we're going to take a look. I'm going to see what it's doing, what it's like. We're going to see how it works. And then I'm going to take you through the UI a bit later when we cut back to live. So first things first, you'll see that we have quite a few presets. You've got pads, keys, lead, bass, stabs, percussion, sequence, and exploration. And that's just within Atelier, and then elements as well, another load in there as well. So I'm just going to go through some, pick them at random, and we're going to see which ones you like. Ooh, very musical. Ooh, okay. Asunda. If my modular was a bird. I love that one. I love the name of that. That's beautiful. Venitos. Vientos? Sorry. Oh, that's interesting. All right, basses. Okay, sure. Okay, so it could be quite techno. Quite nice. Oh, that's nice. That's quite nice. Let's try one more under lights.
So that calm one, like maybe 2 before it ended,
Hmm.
that one was, I mean, they were all really cool, but I really like that one. And I'm not sure if, because when we send things through our streaming setup and stuff, I think it comes through mono. So some of those you may have not heard bouncing in the stereo spectrum, but there's a
Right.
lot of interesting stereo things happening in those tracks. We'll post the video for patrons if you want to check it out. Curtis, so it looks very similar in UI to the ones we talked about before, those free ones that are awesome. But I'm curious, those sounds are pretty trippy. Where do you think it fits in terms of creating tracks?
I think it's an idea generator in that regard. I think it allows you to mess around with it inside the VST itself, create something, and then use that as a springboard to create something new. It's an idea generator, and it's very good at textures. Again, echoing what Sunwarper was saying about it coming through mono, but it is wonderfully stereophonic in that regard. And it can create some very lush textures. So I think a text generator and an idea generator, one of the two, for me at least, that's bookending. Like getting off at the beginning of something and then adding texture to something at the end. But if something sounds a bit plain, that makes sense.
Yeah, like what's your thought?
Well, yeah, we'll have 8 of those. Yeah.
There you go.
It's an interesting little box. I mean, I suppose, it's not necessarily doing anything new, but it does a number of things well. So it's like a sample playback with organic kind of sounding samples and a lot of what sounds like granular synthesis elements thrown in and manipulation and so on. I really like it, I must admit. I think it does a few things really well. It obviously does effects very well and ambient sounds and so on, and things that I think of as being kind of non-neutral ambient sounds. The ones that are a little bit more spooky, a little bit weird. Not entirely, safe space ambient, but some odd sort of sci-fi noises and textures and stuff as well. Some horror movie stuff. But I think it can be quite musical as well. Some of the earlier patches I think sounded like they would be they'd lend themselves to melodic aspects, but it's good for mangling sound a bit and oscillating things and so on. It's one of those little toy box things, really, isn't it? And like you, Curtis, I think it's going to give you ideas. It's certainly going to establish a mood pretty quickly. Which is one thing that often gets me going when I'm writing. It's just to get a some sort of feel, some sort of vibe, and it's full of it, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
sure. Yeah. That's definitely. I mean, how I've used the other ones when we talked about those free ones is Sir, I think, Curtis, right? Sir is one that we talked about. Yeah, I always use it just for drones in the background with like some Valhalla on it, and just set that maybe at like the third or the fifth of the key, and then just build around that. And I love that. So I can see that working for this as well. But I think it, like you were saying, like it could fit for some melodic elements too. Curtis, do you want to walk through the user interface? I think you've got it ready. I just want to ask before I share your screen.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that communication. Yeah, bring it up. What everything runs. I think what's important to kind of bear in mind is that we've just gone through this batch of presets, right? And then, but there's this all runs through the Mandala sort of mega plugin, right? Essentially. And then you have down here, you have the idea of a sequencer and inner mangling. So these sounds, which are on the face of it quite mangled, we'll go through that in just a sec. You then have this matrix where you can play around with different aspects and layer different plugins together, which is not plugins, different presets together, so to speak, which adds a whole nother dimension, which we won't go into today because that's insane right now for the show that we've got. But it's easy to get lost in this bad boy. What gets me in its entirety in the first place is the fact that it's very ambiguous, right? It's very simple. You can see here you've got the sound, and this is it. And you've got 3 parameters on the left hand side. You've got X, Y, and Z. You've got contrast 1, contrast 2, and ether. Now these do change somewhat depending on the preset that you're using. This might be like a lo-fi sound, for example. This might be presence in other plugins, for example. But essentially, you've got those 3 parameters, and that's all you've got. And they're not labeled. Like they're not labeled correctly or correctly in inverted commas. They're not traditionally created, but it's just you don't know what they're going to do, and which is a really nice way of unlocking just your the limitations we create upon ourselves. We go, oh yeah, I know what I'll do. I'll increase the resonance here, or I'll increase the filter here, or I'll increase the LFO here, or something like that. No, none of that stuff. You just have these things, and they do certain things, which allows you just to unlock a different way of working. So as you can see, as I'm moving my mouse across, you've got an equal sign that pops up over here. You've got a triangle sign, which pops up here. And then over here, you've got, where's the circle? Here it is. And it slowly just changes the UI as you're moving to see where things are going. You saw me do it in the video as well. And you can see on the dial, they go up and down as you're going. And you can see how they go through. Automation or any form of this, latching this to a couple of LFOs and letting these go mental, a really good way of doing it. So yeah, it's very simple. There's not a lot to the face of it, which is really nice. It keeps things simple. A lot of the stuff is in the matrix and stuff later on, which we won't go into for now, but you can see from that how very easily and very quickly you can get ideas running. The presets themselves are strong. We had the Behringer sound demo last week where I think the prevailing attitude were the presets were kind of thin and nondescript. These are very much the opposite of that. They're very descriptive. They're full of texture and they're full of changes and movement. And then you've got just a very simple display just to get you going off the offset. And before you know it, you're away and you're flying through it.
Now that's an interesting comparison you bring up, though, talking the Behringer one, which is free, and then this one, because this has a cost. Did we cover the cost yet? I'm not sure if we did, but there's 2 different tiers for it. So there's the standard that's $40, and then the pro, which is $70. And we should probably run through all of the specs of this because it's a little interesting, some of the requirements there, as we talked about. So let me just say, so the difference between the pro and the standard, the pro has an extended 6-octave keyboard range up to 13 round robins, recommended for professionals with at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. Grants full access to the standard edition. The standard edition is memory optimized with 1 round robin, 4-octave keyboard range, suitable for limited system specs, maintains quality and RAM performance. But I believe, let's see, the RAM requirement for the standard, is it 8, did you say, Curtis?
Yeah,
8 gigs of RAM?
I think it's 8, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really cool UI. I like it, but yeah, it's interesting to note the system specs. There's some other system specs if you want to run through them, Curtis. But yeah.
So you've got inside the Pro, for example. So there's 83 sound sources, 25,000 samples in total, which is 20 gigabytes of samples. They've got 6-octave range and 83 SSM powered sample maps, which is just an insane amount. I've had to put the samples on an external hard drive because it's 20 gigs. That's 20 gigs.
Yeah,
I need 20 gigs.
But I mean, you listen to the sound of it and it makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just like that's another big not investment, but big investment in space and storage space. Should you need those sounds, it makes sense. But yeah,
it's built ever more. I mean, since the invention of the M1 chip, these things have just expanded in what they can do. And we're now seeing the plugins kind of catch up in that regard. Like it's like installing a game. It's like installing a game on Steam, for example.
So you're running it on a Windows computer though right now, right?
Yeah, I am.
I'd be curious to see how it runs on my my M2 or any M chip Apple.
Which brings me to, do they have any demos?
Good question, Leon. Like Curtis,
See how it
do
runs.
you have any like demo downloads?
With these ones, I don't think there is a light version. Let me just double check. I don't think there is a light version. They usually do on some of them, but I don't think they did one.
Well, it's just nice, isn't it, when you can see if your machine can handle it before you buy it.
Yeah.
Which brings up another good question there. Lars says, "Oh, you Mac users." What can I say? The M chips are interesting, you know, and the speed and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what this would be on there. It still has a lot of big requirements and stuff, but it brings up another interesting thing I wanted to ask you, Curtis. How do you find it on the CPU? Because we always talk CPU usage with plugins that we cover on this because we want to be conscious of that. So how'd you find it?
I mean, it takes this. What we got here is the Pro. This is a 32 gig. This requires 32 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, I'm using one, and then I'm trying to put another one in, and they're not liking it. If I map the LFOs to the parameters, for example, I then have to close the UI because it's just, and I'm going in blind.
So what I'm gathering is instead of the Diva test now, we've got a Vespera test to see how many instances of Vespera we can run. Now I really want to do that on the M2 because I did the Diva test on my M2. I really want to see the Vespera test. How many instances could I open on that? But yeah, I'm curious. So I mean, we talked about how this, you know, using it for drones and things like that. Were you able to, in the time that you had to do this, were you able to load other plugins and things like that to like make a full song, or is this something more with what you have? You would need to make a drone and then render it out as a stem, and then start building other things on top of it.
I managed to have I was playing around over the weekend. Managed to have 4 iterations of Mandala, a couple of audios, and some other MIDI play. You can do it. You can work with it. I'm trying it in my live stream after the show tonight. And it's gonna be interesting how that works and live streaming.
Yeah,
it's gonna be really interesting.
Actually, do you mind if you can share, if you have the meter, can you see what the CPU's running, just having it open while we're on this?
Yeah, sure. So look, let me bring up.
And this isn't by any means a knock on the synth. It's just we like to know these kind of metrics because it's just interesting because we all have different spec computers and we like to be budget conscious. A lot of what we cover are free plugins and things like that. So we just like to be conscious of these things. Because if we're going to cover it, we want you to know kind of like the extent of its usage and how we can use it and things like that. It sounds amazing.
They don't seem to have pitched it as a low resource using.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, they're completely upfront with it.
Upfront that it's going to be
very, very upfront.
Give you a workout at the best.
you know what you're getting when you get it. So yeah,
and I think that's what they're marketing for. I think that, and that's fair enough. You know, I mean, just for currently my memory is running at 58% with Ableton, Discord, and this going. My MIDI usually sits around 2%, 3%. It's as idle in Ableton, and now my MIDI is currently sitting at 16%, for example. It is a beefy beast, and but they make no CPU 20%. Yeah, they make no qualms about that. They're not trying to be that. They are very much going for the sound design and for your high quality. If you look at their promo videos and stuff, the studio and the equipment that they're using is top of the range. And I think that's who they're going for. Yeah,
I mean, like Ian was saying, for sure, they're not hiding the fact that it's a very intensive plugin and stuff. But we just wanted to cover, you know, if you are interested in it. Yeah, like Lars says, Audionautic is in our corner, looking out for the little guy.
That's what we got. We got that.
Yeah. Exactly all right. Is there anything else you want to cover about it on your end, Curtis, about this plugin?
I think even if you don't want to go get the Vespera, or you can't do it now for $40 or $60, I think MNTRA, generally speaking, are something to go check out. They do have a couple of free and light versions of other plugins and synths, like the Death Whistle that Lars mentioned. They are I do stress, even if you're a seasoned producer and you know a lot about sound design and creating and stuff like that, they do have a lovely way of unlocking a different way of thinking, which can just really kind of shake things up a little bit. So the Mandala 2 is their like general global plugin with all their different plugins in, so to speak. Have a look, have a gander. It's really cool in that regard.
Yeah, I built the whole over 5 track from our first Discord community challenge with just those free plugins of theirs. I just kept using instances of it. And that's what made me think about the CPU, because I think I used like 12 or 15 of that, what is it, Mandala or whatever, and it started to hit some CPU issues. So I was like, oh, I'm just curious to, see where this one goes. But yeah, so that I used that was all I used. That was part of the challenge for the over 5 I did, where I just used that plugin to see if I could make this really interesting long form ambient track, and it worked.
Like that.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to join the conversation and have your opinions and takes heard live and discussed, join us every Wednesday for our Audionautic Deep Space Network live streams.
Yeah, we tune in at 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific. All the latest news, all the latest gear, and the talking points of the independent musician in the international world. It's a hoot. It's great fun. Come on down.
Yeah, we'd love to see you over there. And if you still can't get enough or just want to talk about gear, basically any hour of the day, we have a Discord that's available for all. It's a positive space on the internet to talk all about synthesizers, LFOs, all that kind of stuff that normally you talk to someone, their eyes would glaze over. But here we all want to hear about it and we all want to learn different things. We're international here, so we're on at all times and time zones and whatever have you. So hop on over there. The link is in the description and we'll see you over there.